Hi, I'm Josh, real human, not AI. I still don't have another book review to talk about yet because I haven't been doing a ton of reading, or at least I've been reading very slowly, in part because I've been reading a lot of board game rule books over the past few weeks. I am reading a super amazing book though, which I'm looking forward to talking about eventually, but I'm not going to do so until I also read its sequel, so that might be a little while yet. So in the meantime, I am continuing to catch up on my 2025 adventures that I didn't get around to recording. I'm not going in chronological order because this time I'm going to talk about a concert I attended on Thursday, December 11th, 2025 at Lee's Palace in Toronto, where there were three bands scheduled to play. There was the Filthy Radicals, the Creepshow, and the Dreadnoughts. All three of those bands are bands I have seen multiple times in the past. I've stated in previous videos that the Dreadnoughts are pretty much my favorite live band to see just because of how much fun they are. And this would probably be roughly my fifth time seeing the Dreadnoughts. What was surprising though about this particular lineup is seeing the Dreadnoughts and the Filthy Radicals together, because way back in December of 2018 I had seen the Dreadnoughts and Filthy Radicals perform together, and I had made a video about it, as I do, and I had talked about how the Filthy Radicals set was kind of ruined by the fact that the lead singer had gotten completely wasted and was just off his head and not putting on a good show. And then one person associated with the band actually came on stage during the Dreadnought set and interrupted their set with some kind of drunken monologue, and I had talked about this in the video, and the Dreadnoughts have always been super amazing about responding in person to my videos, even though I have the teeny tiniest little YouTube channel, and way back in 2018 it was even teeny tinier. And at that point, part of the comment they wrote beneath my video said, "Sadly, the guy who interrupted our set was the Filthy Radicals manager, so you won't be seeing them with us again." And I was like, okay, I guess that's the last time I see the Filthy Radicals and the Dreadnoughts perform together. I will add that a year prior to that, in October 2017, the very first video I made on this channel about a concert experience was also a concert that featured both the Filthy Radicals and the Dreadnoughts playing together. And in fact, it was the first time I had ever seen the Filthy Radicals, and it's when I discovered the band and purchased the shirt. And during that video, talking about the Dreadnoughts replying in person to my videos, I'd made a comment about the Dreadnoughts, something along the lines of, you know, I love the band. I really enjoy seeing them live. I'm not a huge fan of their whole polka shtick. And they had commented in a rather affronted manner saying, "Pfft, the polka thing is not a joke. I learned German for the album for that polka song." Obviously, that was a comment from the lead singer of the Dreadnoughts, and I said, okay, fair enough. My bad. Obviously, you really are into the polka thing, and they continue to do it. And, you know, to be fair, there are a lot of punk bands who do just super fun punk renditions of various styles of folk music, and how many bands are doing polka punk? I mean, it might not be my thing, but fair play to the Dreadnoughts. They're doing their thing and enjoying it, and regardless, I obviously love seeing them perform. But anyways, yeah, I was very surprised to see those two bands together on the same bill after that comment from 2018 where the Dreadnought said they wouldn't be performing with them again. But there we were. I obviously was going to go attend the concert because being a fan of the three bands that were on the bill there. But in 2025, Evan had also been doing a lot of his own exploration of music, and a lot of the stuff he was listening to overlapped with a lot of my musical tastes, and he was listening to a lot of stuff from my playlist and getting into some of the bands. So I said to my older son, Evan, who is now 16, at the time, would he have been 16? No, he would have been 15 still. So I said to him, "Do you want to come to your first concert with me? My favorite live band is playing, so will you come check them out?" And he's like, "Yeah, definitely, I'll come along." So I decided to go with Evan as well as with one of my brothers and my brother's friend, and I purchased tickets. And as soon as I hit purchase on the ticket site, I was like, oh, I didn't actually check to see if this concert was all ages, because again, my older boy was 15 years old. So I went and checked, and sure enough, the show was 19 plus. And I was like, oh man, I've purchased the ticket. I've gotten Evan hyped up for the show. how can I get him into this concert? How easy is it to make fake IDs nowadays? And well, at the time it was 2025. So I started to think about that, and I was talking to my brother about it. And he's like, well, why don't you just contact somebody at the venue and just see if they'll let Evan in? I was like, oh, okay, I guess I could do that. So I went to the venue's website, Lee's Palace's website. I found their manager, a gentleman named Joe Clancy, and I sent him an email and explained the situation to him, and he replied and said, yeah, just buy tickets. When you get to the venue on the evening of the concert, just phone me up and I'll get your son in. And me being 50 years old, having interacted with humans for 50 years, I have a deep distrust of my fellow humans. And in the back of my mind, I was like, maybe he just wants to get these tickets sold. Will he actually follow through? But I was like, I'm sure it's just my misanthropic mistrust of humanity coming through. I'm sure it'll be fine and whatever. So before we left for the show that evening, I was sort of going over with Evan a little bit of mosh pit etiquette about when somebody goes down in the pit. If you're not directly next to them, try to hold back the crowd, or if you are next to them, try to help them back up. All this stuff about having each other's back, having a great time, all this. And Evan was like, no, don't worry about it. I'm not really going to get in the pit. It's my first concert. Just want to check it out. We drove out to Toronto the evening of the show. Like I said, December 11th. It was an unusually frigid night, even for Canada in December. It must have, in terms of the wind chill, it probably felt like about minus 20 degrees Celsius or minus 4 Fahrenheit for those in the US. But we arrived. I phoned up the number Joe Clancy had given me, and there was no answer. Of course, my brother and my brother's friend entered the venue, but me and Evan were stuck outside while I was trying to get in touch with Joe Clancy. And I talked to the security at the door and explained the situation to the security guard there, and he also got on his phone, tried to phone Joe Clancy, no answer. And so the security guard was like, oh, I think I just saw him pop out for dinner. I'm sure he'll be back in a few minutes here. So we waited and froze our butts off. I kept bugging the security guard. The security guard, again, tried to call Joe Clancy, no answer. Went up to Joe's office to look for him, couldn't find him there. Talked to other staff members, nobody knew where he was. To make a long story short, we stood out in the cold, me and Evan, for the entirety of the set of the Filthy Radicals, and kept bugging the security. At some point I was like, man, am I gonna have to go around to the back of the venue and see if I can find a way to sneak in through the back musician's entrance or something like this, or bribe my way in or something? But at the end of the day, I think that Joe Clancy, the manager of Lee's Palace, had just called it a day and went home and didn't follow through on his promise. Needless to say, even though I've been to Lee's Palace to see punk shows in the past, I will not be going back to Lee's Palace again because of Joe Clancy and his deceptive ways to sell tickets. But anyways, the security must have talked to somebody in charge and gotten us in, because somebody came out with a wristband for Evan, and we finally got into the venue just as the Filthy Radicals were playing their last notes on stage and finishing up their set. I will say, on a positive note, while we were standing just absolutely freezing cold outside this venue, they wouldn't even let us stand inside. I was like, can we at least step inside and keep warm? And they were like, no. But anyways, while we were standing there, there was this perfect reflection of the punk rock scene playing out in front of us, because there was just some dude off to the side having a smoke outside the venue, and some random drunk guys walking by on the street, and drunk guy stops and was like, hey, what's going on here? Who's playing? And then the dude having a smoke explains that, some really amazing bands. There's this pirate punk band, the Dreadnoughts. They're amazing, and all of this stuff. And drunk dude is like, oh, that's cool. And dude having a smoke is like, hey, I've got an extra ticket that my friend couldn't make it. Why don't you come in and check out the show? And drunk dude's like, well, I don't know. It is my birthday. And smoking dude's like, it's your birthday, man. And what? Gives the dude a big hug. They're best friends in seconds. They end up going into the show together. And I was like, This is just an encapsulation of the punk rock scene. A bunch of people who look mean and filthy and chaotic, but truly have hearts of gold and are very welcoming and are just like, come on in and have fun together. So that was pretty damn cool. But anyways, yeah, like I said, somebody in the staff finally had pity on us and got us in. The Filthy Radicals are a ska core band from Toronto, Ontario, which is sort of punk, ska, and hardcore all mixed together in the most wonderful flavors ever. And I was sorry to have missed them this time, because despite that one negative experience I had seeing them perform, I have had also extremely positive experiences watching their show too. So we did get into Lee's Palace. It's just a tiny club, and it was jam-packed. I was quite impressed with the number of people that were at the show there. But next up were The Creepshow, a psychobilly band from Burlington, Ontario, Canada. And they're a band, again, another one that I've seen perform multiple times in the past. And in fact, going all the way back to 2013, so long ago now, 13 years ago, I was watching them. That would have been not too long after Kenda, the lead singer, became the lead singer of The Creepshow. But I was in London, Ontario, watching them perform at Call the Office with a couple other bands called the Hellbound Hepcats and the Burnouts. And at one point during this set, I saw Kenda get off the back of the stage, and she's bent over just heaving, because just obviously not feeling very well. So me, as a former paramedic and as somebody with chronic GI problems with Crohn's disease, I always carry stomach medications with me in my pocket. So I went around to the back of the stage where poor Kenda was heaving and not having a great time, and I said to her, I've got some Gravol here in my pocket if you want some. And of course, her being a smart lady was not about to take pills off of a stranger at the back of a stage. And so she's politely declined and got back on stage and got back on with the show. But anyhow, it was great to see them again. The Creepshow are very fun. The sound mix wasn't great in the venue that evening. It seemed a little muddy, so I'll play a quick clip here. But you know, the sound kind of represents the fact that it wasn't super great, unfortunately. Kenda did look tired, but she is a mom, and she was still rocking out harder than I was in the crowd there. And, you know, I'm a dad, and I could barely muster up the energy to sit down and record this video today. I'm so damn tired. So, you know, good for her. She's still up there rocking out, performing, putting on an amazing performance. At one point, a couple of the musicians from the Filthy Radicals, a couple of the horn section, did come on stage to play a song with the Creepshow, so I sort of got to see at least part of the Filthy Radicals perform. I had sort of thought about saving my energy for the Dreadnought set, but not long after the Creepshow started playing, the spirit moved me, and I just had to get into the pit. So I hopped into the pit a few times, and then before I know it, there was Evan next to me in the pit, and he had gotten in there, decided to become actively involved with the show, which was pretty cool. And at one point, Kenda herself, the lead singer, actually jumped into the pit and got involved as well a little bit. So yeah, the Creepshow were great. And then it was time for the Dreadnoughts, a folk punk band from Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada, who I had been hyping up so much to my son, Evan. The last time I had seen the Dreadnoughts perform in Toronto on Thursday, May 23rd, 2024, I had noticed that the person playing bass on stage with them was actually the Creepshow's bass player, Sean Sickboy McNabb, although at that concert, the Creepshow, the band, wasn't performing. I just happened to notice that their bass player was Sean McNabb, and it got me wondering, where's Andrew Hay, their usual bass player who I've seen in the past? And once again, when they got on stage after the Creepshow set, I noticed that once again, Sean McNabb was playing bass for the Dreadnoughts. And so I just had a quick peek on Wikipedia, and it does still list Andrew Hay as the current band member who plays bass for the Dreadnoughts. However, under the list of touring members of the band, it lists Sean Sickboy McNabb as the bass player for the touring members of the band. So I thought, oh, that's interesting. Maybe Andrew doesn't tour with the band anymore. And maybe just when they come to Toronto, Sean McNabb performs with them, or maybe elsewhere too. I'm not exactly sure. But anyways, I didn't end up recording much of their show because I was more focused on participation and just being with my son Evan and participating together in the pit and just enjoying the band. So I only got one half decent clip here to show you in a second. But, you know, as I said before, the Dreadnoughts put on just such a super fun live show. It's all about fun with the Dreadnoughts and their live performances. And so they did their usual shenanigans. They crowd surfed a band member to the bar and back during one of their songs, although this time it wasn't their drummer, the Drunken Swede, who's the usual person who gets crowd surfed to the bar and back. It was somebody else from the band this time who got the ride to the bar and back. They also did the whole polka line, the cha-cha line, where almost the entire crowd in this venue went back to back and danced their way, and they had the crowd dance literally down the stairs. Was this an upper floor venue? No, this was just a single floor venue. I was thinking about the last time. So anyways, they had the whole crowd dancing in one big line out to the street, back into the venue again, as they have done in previous shows. This time they did do one activity that I haven't seen them do before, which was they requested that the crowd make a triangle mosh pit instead of the usual circle pit that tends to form during these shows. They were like, make a triangle mosh pit. And there was one lady in the crowd, bless her, who did her very best to make it happen. She was running back and forth trying to get people to line up in straight lines to make a big triangle pit, but it didn't exactly work out that great, which I'm sure is the whole point of the thing, is how dumb an idea it is. But that is what really sets the Dreadnoughts apart, is their crowd engagement, their crowd participation. They're a little bit like NoFX in the fact that there's a lot of banter between songs. There's not a lot of back-to-back-to-back songs like a band like Rancid would do, for example, when they play live. But in addition to the banter that NoFX usually do, like I said, the Dreadnoughts have all these crowd participation activities that they like to get going, and that's part of what makes it such a fun experience for the people in the crowd. I did pause to record a brief clip during a slightly more chill song when they were doing an a cappella song. For the Dreadnought set, Evan did come back into the pit briefly, but he ended up becoming pretty overwhelmed with exhaustion and heat and desperately needed some water and rest, so I went off to the bar to buy some expensive water and make sure Evan had a drink. It really, the physical experience of mosh pits is hard to describe in the overwhelming heat and exhaustion of the participation, but you know, it's such a fun time from my personal experience. At one point in the pit, this young lady asked me to put her up to crowd surf. So I sort of got down, picked her up, had her on my shoulder, carried her into the pit, but she wasn't getting off. So I kind of walked a little further. She still wasn't getting off. She was just sitting there on my shoulder. Probably about a good half a minute of me wandering around. She finally found her perfect spot to hop off me and crowd surf on top of the crowd there. But that was kind of funny. I did try to, as much as my energy allowed, enjoyed my time moshing in the pit there and participating as much as I could, and had an absolutely amazing time. When the show was over, before we headed out of the venue, I said to Evan, do you want a Dreadnoughts shirt or something from the merch table there? And he's like, actually, I'd really love to have a Creepshow shirt. He's like, I really, really liked the Creepshow. So I was like, no problem. We went to the merch table. I got him a Creepshow t-shirt, his very first band t-shirt from his very first concert, and our very first father-son mosh. What an amazing, wonderful experience that was. I asked Evan about it, and if it was the type of thing he might do again, and he said he especially loves the Creepshow. That was his favorite band to see of the two that we were able to see, because we didn't get to see the Filthy Radicals. And he said he'd love to do it again with one of his good friends who has really been responsible for helping Evan to discover music. He has a really good friend named DJ who is big into music and is partly the reason Evan has been exploring a lot of music over the past few years. So I got him the shirt. And then we got back outside in the frigid December air, and of course my t-shirt was absolutely drenched with sweat. However, being a 50-year-old who has been attending punk shows for the past 3 decades, I do come to every show now with my mosh pit survival kit, where I keep a dry shirt in my car along with some Gatorade and fluids to replenish some lost fluids and electrolytes, and some snacks and candies to get my energy back up again, and so forth. But when we were, because I always look for free parking, we were parked a little ways from the venue. I had a bit of a walk to get there, me with my drenched shirt, and I mean, this always happens when I attend concerts in the winter. It's one reason I don't like going to concerts in the winter, because I'm an absolute wimp when it comes to the cold. You know, I have an extremely high pain tolerance, but I just don't want to be cold ever. I don't want to be in pain either, but you know what I mean. So what I tend to do always is just take the wet shirt off, because I figured maybe that's a teeny tiny bit less cold than walking around in minus 20 degrees Celsius weather with a soaked shirt on. But it was kind of funny, because when I took my wet t-shirt off as we were walking back to the car, I just started steaming like I was in a sauna or something. Just all the sweat in the freezing cold air just started steaming off me, and I was carrying my shirt. By the time we got back to the car, maybe 5 minutes later, my shirt had started to freeze solid. Like if I stood outside for another 5 minutes, it would have been like completely rock solid. It was that freaking cold out there. But all in all, it was a super enjoyable time, a real special time for me as a dad. And I'm grateful to bands like the Creepshow and the Dreadnoughts, who are still going strong after all these years and still giving me such really fun experiences to enjoy. But I'd love to hear from you. What music have you been enjoying? I just love to hear about music in general. So if you've been really rocking to anything in particular, I'd love to hear all about it. And in any case, I just really appreciate you watching. Cheers. I've stated in previous videos that the Dreadnoughts are pretty much the most live. At some point we were like, man. So yeah, the Creepshow were amazing, of course. Gone Home said, the last time I had seen the Dreadnoughts perform in Toronto on Thursday, May 23rd, 2004. What? 2004? That can't be right. 2024.